Hi, and welcome again to the Joy of Tennis Teaching. My good friend and only two-time winner that I know of the PBI Pro of the Year, the fabulous Fabio Vasconcelos, and wrote and asked me if I would do a video on teaching group lessons. And so I'm going to do two videos on group lessons. Today we're going to talk about the mechanics of teaching a good group lesson. And the second video we'll get into drills and how to develop some good drills. So first of all, I want to go through the seven aspects, the seven mechanical parts of making a group lesson. And number one is welcoming the students and getting them onto the court for a warm-up. When your students sign in, you should write down their names. I always kept an index card in my pocket where I'd write down the names of all the students coming in. And while they were warming up, I'd be repeating those names and trying to come up with Dan in the white Adidas hat, something to remember each student by. I can't stress enough how valuable this is if you can learn those names, and it just students notice this all the time. So make sure you learn the names. And the second thing I will do during a warm-up is I do an evaluation of the skill level of the students. I try to look at who would hit well with which other participant in the group lesson. Not only just their skill level, but maybe their athleticism and their energy and their personality as well. So that's a very valuable use of your time. So don't worry about letting the warm-up run longer. I would always let that warm-up run until I had nailed, so that I knew all of the students. Then we would bring them in and do a short demo. The idea of the demo is to show the students, for the visual learners and for everybody, what we were going to be doing during the clinic. What were the drills, what were the exercises, and what were the concepts that we were going to be showing. For some reason, a lot of coaches skip the idea of the demo. And I don't know why, because it's very valuable. I've asked coaches, and sometimes they say, well, I don't like to let the people cool down after they've warmed up. Most club level players are not going all out in the warm up to the point where a cool down will hurt them too much. And I think it's more than worth the effort and time to have them go ahead and do watch a demo. It'll make your clinic look so much more professional, and your group lesson will be so much more valuable. So now we finish the demo. Now we pair people up into our groups and we send them out onto the court to do their drills. Now I want to talk about the mechanics of what the tennis coach does. It's very, very important that you learn to properly position yourself and how to move around the court during a group lesson. I'm not going to talk about feeding position at all, because I hate feeding during group lessons. Almost all of the drills that we try to do are live ball drills, or drills where the students are feeding or tossing to each other, but mostly hitting with each other. If you're feeding in a group drill, I think you're really limiting yourself. So what we want to talk about is, what do you do when the students are hitting with each other? Well, the first thing that you have to do is learn never to stand at the net post looking back and forth like you're a glorified umpire. Only stand at the net if you are performing the role of an umpire, if you are doing a drill where you want to keep score and be in a neutral position. But most of the time you want to work from the corners. And by the corners, I mean in the corner, behind the baseline and sideline, so that you're close enough to the student hitting in that corner that you can coach them quietly up close, but you can see the other three students so that you can encourage them from afar. I think this was one of the most brilliant things that Peter ever taught me, was how to coach up close and encourage from far away. During my training, Peter used to do these 3-hour clinics with 8 students on 2 courts. And we noticed that, how Peter was always encouraging the person way far away on the other court while he was up close coaching the student that he was nearest to. And this does two things that are very important. Number one, coaching up close gives each student the feeling that they're getting a private lesson, that they're learning something that's just for them. And by encouraging from far away, it lets the students know he can see everything. I can't slack off. As a matter of fact, I vividly remember listening to the students after these 3-hour clinics. And by far the most common comment was, I don't know how he does it, but he's everywhere during this clinic. And that was the feeling the students had, that Peter was everywhere, that they couldn't hide from him, that he was always catching them doing something right. And it made for a very positive experience. So I went over it quickly, but the idea of teaching private lessons in a group environment doesn't mean standing and coaching the one person, but it just means giving them enough personal attention and enough of a tip or a concept that will really help their game, that they go away feeling like they were in a private lesson. Next, what we want to talk about is how to end the group lesson. I think it's important to end it on a high physically and then on a high intellectually and emotionally. To finish a group lesson on a high physically, what you have to do is finish with a competitive drill, either a very highly competitive drill on your court with your students, or we bring everybody together on one court and the teams all compete, or you compete on your individual courts and the head pro or whoever's running the clinic will, keep the energy up and create the competition between the courts. However you do it, you want to finish your last drill as a real high energy, competitive type drill. Then you bring everybody together on your first court and you do a summary. And I think the summary is so important for finishing on an intellectual and emotional high. And a lot of times I see the pros who use the summary as a chance for them to redo the demo, for them to tell the students what they wanted to teach them during this clinic. I think it's far, far more valuable to just tell the students, what was your highlight of today's clinic, of today's group lesson? And then you listen to what each person says, and you can add a comment, or it just builds and builds and builds. I know in the years at the Marriott's Desert Springs, by far the greatest clinics that we ever had, just where you felt afterwards like, wow, that was a super success, had to do with the fact that the students gave outstanding summaries. Please understand and learn the mechanics, because no matter what level of student, what environment, every group lesson has these same steps. Welcome the students, learn the names, warm up. Do a demo. Match the people up according to their ability levels and try to make it as uniform and as smooth as possible. Sometimes you won't be able to do that, but over time you'll learn the tricks of how to make it more compatible. Number 4, make sure that the coach understands his positioning. Position yourself so that you are in a corner to coach up close and encourage from far away. And there's another reason that number 4 is very important. For those of you who went through training with me, you know that during the training program, when you were doing group lessons, I was always looking for an opportunity to steal a student. I found that this was a very, very valuable way to teach the importance of always being able to see your students. Once at Camp Blue Star in North Carolina, I had this great young coach from England who was his first summer at the camp, and he was teaching 6 students the serve. And he had them all lined up on the baseline. They were spaced apart appropriately. They had their balls in an area where it wasn't going to be dangerous. And he was doing an excellent job of teaching this clinic, except for one small thing. He was positioning himself in such a way that he couldn't see the other students on the court. He was putting his back to the student. He was standing so close and in such a position with the student that he was coaching that he couldn't see the other students. So I kept slowly and quietly removing students and putting them in the trailer that was next door to the court he was teaching on. About 25 minutes or so into the court, he looked around and it was bloody hell. And he was down to one student. He had completely lost all of his other students, and I'll never forget the expression on his face. And Paul Newman, you know who I'm talking about, so let him know that he's always had a soft spot in my heart for how good-naturedly he took the fact that I stole 5 of his 6 students. So make sure that you're always able to see your students. This will help you so much in doing a good job. Number 6, make sure that you finish on a high with the drill that you do. Try to finish with a high energy, good competition drill that will allow the students to use what they've learned in the previous time. And then number 7, make sure that you finish off with a great summary. And I would highly encourage you to just use the simple question of what was your highlight of this group lesson? If you ask for the highlight and try to pick somebody that was enthusiastic about the lesson as the first person, because sometimes people will be a little shy, but if they start giving good highlights, it can really get on a roll and become a very, very uplifting way to finish your group lesson. So that's it. Fabio, if I left anything great out, let me know and I'll bring it up in the next one. But I hope that this helps you, and group lessons can be a great time. The next video we'll do, I'll talk about my experience with doing drills in a group lesson. So for now, that's it for the joy of tennis teaching. Goodbye, Sherlock.